playoffs, bro.
Yeah.
I want him so bad.
Oh, I'm with you. I'm with you there. Look, there's a lot to dive into. But thrilled to have a phenomenal guest today, man. He was the 2002 NFL MVP, played 18 years, is a St. Joe's prep guy, Delaware, Northeast guy. Our man,
Delaware,
my guy, Rich Gannon. What's happening, Rich?
Rich.
Guys, it's so great to be with you. I hope everybody had a great Christmas. Looking forward to a great New Year. It's been a phenomenal NFL season so far. If you like late game heroics and comeback victories, we've seen, I think, 44 so far this season. That's the most in NFL history.
Yeah, Rich always has unbelievable numbers. Rich, before we get into the Eagles, I want to get your impressions because surprisingly, he was great the other night. J.J. Watt hanging him up, man. Made the announcement, via social media not all that long ago. Thoughts on his career?
Yeah, I've got great respect for his body of work, both on the field and off the field. I did a lot of J.J. Watt's games over the years for CBS Sports. Just an incredible player, so disruptive. Could play any of the positions along the defensive line. Could play inside. Could play outside. Played the run. Played the pass. Was a great pass rusher. Played with a great motor. Very intense player. We saw him play on the offensive side of the ball and catch touchdowns, lined up as a tight end, as an H-back, as a running back. He did it all, especially with the Houston Texans. And he did so much off the field, as you guys know. I think during the hurricane, the storms down there in South Texas, he was phenomenal. Raised millions of dollars for the needy, and just an all-around wonderful man. Former NFL Man of the Year recipient. The NFL is gonna miss J.J. Watt.
Yeah, $41 million Richie raised for charities for the hurricane. Incredible, just straight up incredible. Rich, so let's start with the Eagles here. It was a tough game. You turn it over 4 times. I don't care who you're playing; it's going to be difficult, especially a team like the Cowboys. But they were still right in it. I mean, they took it down to the 19-yard line and just couldn't cash there. Could have maybe walked out of there with a 1-point victory. What do you think generally? I mean, the game itself and where the Eagles are at right now.
Well, I'm encouraged by what we've seen so far from this team. I'm a little concerned, though, with some of the injuries. That Lane Johnson injury is significant. I mean, we're talking about one of the best right tackles in all of football. I think the Eagles, in their last 14 games without him, they've only won 3. So they've lost 11 of the 14 games they played without Lane Johnson. So that's a significant injury if he's out for an extended period. Sounds like he's going to be out at least a couple of weeks, hopefully have him back for the postseason. Maddox is another significant injury. Gardner Johnson, I mean, they're starting to get banged up a little bit in some key areas, so that is a concern. But even with Gardner Minshew in there, and you mentioned it, Rob, I mean, they turned the ball over 4 times. I mean, you're just not going to beat teams when you turn it over 4 times, regardless of how well you play around the quarterback. I think Gardner Minshew is a terrific backup quarterback. I think that's what he is. I think he can come in, doesn't need a ton of reps. He can play well for you. I thought at times he gave him a chance to win, but he was responsible for 3 of those 4 turnovers, and you just can't have that from the quarterback position.
Hey, Rich, I've been talking about this since it was announced that the Eagles were going to sit Jalen Hurts for the Cowboys game, and I need a quarterback's perspective of this. Now, Barrett and I have the same contacts inside to give us inside information. They keep telling us he's fine. But when you only need the 1 game to wrap up the number 1 seed, okay, you kept him out of the Dallas game as a precautionary measure. I've been saying if you keep him out of the Saints game and you still need that 1 game to clinch, that tells me it could be a little bit more than just a sprain. When you're that close, because you don't want that last game against the Giants to mean something, because it means more to the Giants than you two. And as you know, divisional games, any and everything can happen in divisional games. Give me your perspective on how you perceive the way they're handling Jalen right now.
Well, I think they're being smart. I think you have to, take into consideration how much he means to the team. But at the same time, and if he comes back and he plays and he has another setback, you could lose the player for the postseason. And I just think that's something that you have to be careful about. I did talk to an orthopedic surgeon specifically who is very involved, Dr. David Chow, who obviously has Sports Injury Central, former NFL team physician. He thought it was a good sign that after the injury, Jalen Hurts actually finished out the game. If it was something of significance, he didn't think that he'd be able to do that. So I think that's an encouraging sign. I think he could obviously get his shoulder injected and play if he had to play this week. I'm hoping he plays this week because I think this is an important game. I mean, I think there's a lot at stake when you look at having home field advantage and throughout the playoffs. I mean, that's. I mean, could you imagine just having to play two home playoff games in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
So I hope he's able to play. I think he's probably pretty close, but I think the Eagles are just being smart. This will be a pretty good week of practice to see where he's at.
Rich, being a quarterback and an offensive guy, looking at Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator, and how he's able to make these game plans and specifically cater them around these quarterbacks. Now, how good is he, and how would you say he's up there? 'Cause, I mean, I played with your boy Chucky, man. His first coordinator job. Then he went to you and with the Raiders. His was complicated. What do you think about Shane Steichen's play calling?
I think Shane Steichen's done an amazing job. We give out an award every year, the Associated Press, for the top assistant coach in the National Football League, and Shane Steichen's on my list. I don't think he gets enough credit for the job he's done, not only as a play caller, but really the development of Jalen Hurts. Remember this time last year, guys, there's a lot of question marks in Philadelphia about whether or not Jalen Hurts could be the guy where the Eagles stockpiling draft picks so that they could be in the quarterback market in 2023. I mean, we no longer have those conversations. I mean, he's taken a big step this year in terms of his production, his consistency, his leadership. I just think he's become a complete player at that position. We're talking about a quarterback right now that's on my short list for the NFL MVP award. I mean, that's the kind of season that he has had. I think where he's really improved, we know about his playmaking abilities, ability to extend and improvise and create and manufacture offense. I think where he's gotten a whole lot better is functioning from the pocket. I think his anticipation's better. I think his accuracy's better. I think his patience is better. I think we see him taking the extra hits, whereas in years, in the previous 2 seasons, he'd take off. So I think he's understanding protections better. I think he understands concepts better. I think he understands fronts and defenses and pressures a whole lot better. I think a lot of it has to go to the job that Shane Steichen has done. I think they built an offense around what he's comfortable with, concepts that he's got a history with. I think they built an offense around their ability to be a great running football team. And they really try to accentuate what they have up front, which is, I think, one of the best offensive lines in football. And when you can get a lead like the Eagles have and lean on people and smash them in the mouth with the running game and have a mobile quarterback and have a defense that can pin their ears back and lead the National Football League in sacks, you've got something special going on.
Rich, let me ask you about the NFC. And I know you keep a very close eye on the Vikings, one of your former teams, but we know San Fran's red hot right now. Red hot. We got Dallas, so, up close and personal. We saw them last week. You look at it for you, how would you rank this thing, man? I mean, you get the Eagles at 13-2, remarkable start for sure. A little banged up right now, but how do you look at the NFC?
Well, I know both those teams well, and I think the Minnesota Vikings have really done some good things. 11 of their wins this year have been one-score games. So
That's
you say,
crazy.
well, why is that significant? Well, last year they were 2-5 in games decided by 4 points or less. So they figured out how to play their best football when it matters the most late in games. My issue, and Rob, you and I have had this conversation, their defense to me is a problem. They give up a lot of points. They give up a lot of explosive plays. They're dead last in pass defense. So if they can't get that figured out when they get into the postseason against better quarterbacks, better play callers, better receivers, they're going to struggle. The team that really would concern me if I was Philadelphia is that group out in the Bay Area, the San Francisco 49ers. They've got the number one defense in football. And trust me, guys, it's not even close. They've got the number one defense in total defense, number one scoring defense, number one run defense. They haven't allowed a running back to rush for 60 or more yards in a game this season. They create negative plays, turnovers, sacks. Bosa's outstanding. D'Amico Ryans, I think, is probably, we talked about Shane Steichen. If D'Amico Ryans isn't on everybody's short list for assistant coach of the year, there's a problem. And I don't think he'll be an assistant coach much longer. And then they've got this young quarterback and Brock Purdy that has really come in and impressed. I mean, it's not too big for him. Yeah. He's made some great decisions. They built this offense. They've changed some things offensively around what he does well. And he doesn't have – the defense is only getting up 15 points a game. He doesn't have to score 30 points each week. San Francisco is a team I'd keep an eye on in the West.
Hey, Rich, now that you brought up San Francisco, give me your perspective on what Kyle Shanahan has been able to do with Brock Purdy. I mean, the guy was the last player drafted. He's an afterthought, the third-string quarterback. he hit the ground running at a crucial game against Miami, and he looked like he was a starter from day one. Can you talk about how Shanahan has redesigned that offense to a certain degree to make it more comfortable within the scheme of things? And he hasn't missed a beat from day one.
Yeah, Brock Purdy's an interesting guy. I studied him a little bit last year. You know, he was a 4-year starter at Iowa State. He played in 48 games. He completed 68% of his passes. I think he threw 84 touchdowns. I mean, we talk about experience, how important it is. He doesn't have NFL experience, but he's played in a lot of big games at Iowa State and was a winner. And so they liked that about him. As you mentioned, he was the last player taken in the draft. I think he came in. It was a good situation for him. He got a chance to watch and learn behind a couple older players, particularly a veteran player like Jimmy Garoppolo. And he's been around Brian Griese, who's the quarterback coach there. You guys all know Brian. He was a longtime player in this league, broadcaster. He's done an amazing job with a young quarterback. And I think Kyle Shanahan is as good as there is in terms of, I think, creativity, ingenuity in terms of, doing some different things offensively that you just don't see week in and week out. And this Purdy kid's come in, and you mentioned the Miami game. That's what really opened my eyes. He steps in the Miami game, plays really well. Then the next week, they play the Buccaneers in San Francisco. It's David versus Goliath. It's Brock Purdy versus his idol, Tom Brady. And they put up 28 points in the first half on that Buccaneers defense, and he looked terrific. So I think when you see a guy perform like that and handle pressure situations, I think you realize that this isn't just your normal rookie. This is a kid that's ready for prime time.
When I look at the Eagles though, and how they played the past couple weeks, I see things have changed in how they're approaching games and in game decision making. I think the focus is not there. What would you say is the biggest thing with them as far as these turnovers and why they're having all these turnovers? I think right now, the past 7 games, they've led the NFL in the turnover to takeaway ratio. What do you think is the biggest thing to you? As a player, I think it's, lack of focus, and these guys may be feeling themselves a little bit.
Well, for the most part, I mean, particularly Jalen Hurts has been really good with ball security. So I think sometimes, you change players, you get different players. And then we mentioned, the change at quarterback, Gardner Minshew, he was responsible for 3 of those turnovers. He had 2 interceptions, he had a fumble. I think sometimes you get behind in a game, you're taking some calculated risk. I think, mentioned ball security. It's got to be a point of emphasis. As you guys know, the turnover ratio is so important each week in the NFL. But when you get into the turnovers are magnified because you're playing against better defenses. You're playing against the best quarterbacks and the best systems in football. So that when you do turn the football over, you're turning it over to someone named, Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes. They know what to do with it, right? They don't need any help with field position and scoring opportunities. So when you make a mistake in the postseason, the mistakes are magnified. I think they did a study years ago, and they said that the average turnover in the regular season was like equal to 4.5 points. Well, in the postseason, I think it was 5 points. In other words, if you make a mistake in the postseason, you're going to pay the price. So that's where, I think if you're Shane Steichen, I think if you're Nick Sirianni, you're having this conversation. Guys, we've had a great season. There's a couple areas where we can be better. I think creating more negative plays defensively. I mean, they had 6 sacks in the game last week. I think they've gone 4 straight games where they've had 6 sacks or more. I mean, they're getting pressure on the quarterback. But they just got to get their hands on a few more balls, get the ball out, and work on a little bit more on ball extraction. But offensively, you're right. When you go on the road and you turn it over 4 times, you really limit your opportunities and your chances for winning.
Rich, we know you got a busy schedule today, man. We appreciate you squeezing us in here, and it's always
man. Appreciate it.
Always great hanging out with you, man. I'm looking forward to talking to you on Friday. Rich,
you guys are the best. Thanks for having me. Look forward to being with you soon.
Get him straight, bro.
There you go. That is Rich Gannon. Rich is an awesome dude, man. He is a great guy. Philly's own. That's for sure. So